It's the start of a new week, and let's start it off with a bang. Welcome into the show. Happy Monday, everybody. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr., and coming up on the show, offseason activities are over for the Eagles, so it is time to put together a 53-man roster projection following OTAs and Minicamp as we look ahead to Eagles training camp at the end of July. And to set the table on today's show, on the Madden scale, how would you grade the Eagles roster that Howie Roseman has put together? Let me know down in the comment section right now. And of course, on that Madden scale, grade this Eagles roster from 1 to 100. 100 being elite, no blemishes, absolutely perfect. 1 being the worst roster in the NFL. I hope nobody out there is dumb enough to type those ones. Let's begin at the quarterback position. I'm going to rock with 3 quarterbacks here on the initial 53. Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl MVP. Tanner McKee, the top backup quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. And then I think that Kyle McCord, 6th-round pick out of Syracuse, beats out Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think that he's better right now. He's been performing at a higher clip. I think he has more upside, and he can be that next quarterback to be a part of the Eagles quarterback developmental factory. And the ideal outcome here would be put Dorian Thompson-Robinson on the practice squad. I'm a believer in his abilities. I really liked him coming out of UCLA. So did the Eagles. That's why they brought DTR in on a top 30 visit. It wasn't ideal for him to start off his career with the bad organization with the Cleveland Browns. Now he goes to a good one, the best in the NFL with Philadelphia, and I'd like to see him continue his development, get on track on the Eagles practice squad. Now we shift gears to the running back position. Saquon Barkley coming off NFL Offensive Player of the Year honors. He's going to be RB1. He thinks that he's just entering his prime if he could stay healthy. That's scary for the rest of the NFL. Will Shipley is RB2. A.J. Dillon, a free agency pickup, is RB3. You get 3 different running backs here with different styles. I'm a really big believer in the ability that Shipley has. And then Jeffrey Lurie said earlier this offseason, we want to resurrect the fullback position. We believe there's a spot for that position in today's NFL. And we saw before he got hurt last year, the Eagles were really starting to incorporate Ben VanSumeren as their fullback. I think they like what he can do for this team, what the fullback position can do for this offense. He hasn't been training with the linebackers. He's been training with the fullbacks, and so I think he makes this 53. The Eagles did keep 3 running backs on the initial 53-man roster last year. I think history repeats itself there. You could look at a player like Montrell Johnson, Shenderick Powell, some UDFAs who I think could put together good preseasons and training camps. We haven't really heard from them much because it's hard for running backs to make a lot of headway when you're not popping pads and you're not tackling at all. And we'll see what they can do later this summer. And then we'll talk about Avery Williams a little bit later. Wide receiver. This is going to be a very fascinating training camp preseason battle for the 4th and 5th wide receiver spots. A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, top wide receiver duo in the NFL. Jahan Dotson has had a really good spring during a contract year. He also came on in the playoffs and played some really good ball. But a lot of the chatter coming out of OTAs and Minicamp was how well Terrace Marshall and Danny Gray performed. Danny Gray is a 4-3 guy. The speed to get past the defense, take the top off of the defense, always forcing a safety to shade over toward his side. And he comes to the Eagles with a lot of draft pedigree. He didn't work out for the Niners. Same could be said for Terrace Marshall. He's a 4-4 guy at 6'2", over 200 pounds. He can go up and get it, and he can run, and he's a former 2nd-round pick. And so I think that Terrace Marshall and Danny Gray have an opportunity to beat out Aniyah Smith and Johnny Wilson. And you might say, well, are the Eagles really going to move off of 2 selections from the 2024 draft? Smith hasn't really shown much, nor has Johnny Wilson, who looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane, and Terrace Marshall and Danny Gray are still young players, and I think they add interesting elements and dynamics to your wide receiver room. So it's not a sure thing that Marshall and Gray are going to make the team. Again, we have to see what happens when the pads come on, but they have a really good opportunity. Also look out for UDFA Darius Cooper, and I'm interested to see what Giles Jackson can do throughout training camp and in the preseason. To the tight end position, I think the Eagles only go with 2 here, and I'm going with 2 on my 53-man roster projection. That's what they did last year. Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra, and that forces Philadelphia to make some difficult roster decisions. They signed Harrison Bryant in free agency. They signed Kylan Granson in free agency. Harrison Bryant is 6'5". You can use him in short yardage. You can use him in the red zone. Kylan Granson's a little bit smaller, but he's an excellent blocking tight end. And I just think that Bryant, Granson are better practice squad candidates as compared to E.J. Jenkins, who had a good training camp and preseason last year. Don't get me started on Kamala, too. I think he stinks. Nick Muse caught that dime of a ball from Kyle McCord last week during mandatory minicamp. But I think that you can get away with getting either Bryant or Granson on the practice squad, and for a few weeks you can elevate them to the opening or to the game day roster, The Eagles are just deep at other positions. And I don't think that you need to have 3 tight ends on the 53 when you have a lot of talent and depth at more important positions. Offensive line, 10 players here. And like tight end, you're going to have to cut some really solid players here who can land on other NFL rosters and contribute on other NFL rosters. It goes to show you that Howie Roseman has put together a deep football club. So your starting offensive line, Jordan Mailata at left tackle, Landon Dickerson left guard, Cam Jurgens at center, Tyler Steen right guard, Lane Johnson, the best in the business at right tackle. You're going to keep Kenyon Green as a former first-round pick, I would imagine, but he stunk with Houston. If he continues to stink, cut him and keep one of these young players. Drew Kendall, you drafted in the 6th round. You drafted Miles Hinton and Cameron Williams. I think Cameron Williams and Miles Hinton, with the flexibility to play tackle and guard, plus them having a lot of ability and potential as young players under Jeff Stoutland, they make the team because they'll get scooped up by other teams if they don't make the Eagles 53. Drew Kendall is being trained to play center and guard. The positional versatility, it helps them there. The Eagles also gave Cameron Williams a lot of money up front. Very rare for them to do that. If he went back to Texas, I think he could have been a first-round pick in 2026. Kendall Lamb, he is a veteran offensive tackle who last year played well before getting hurt with the Miami Dolphins. You're going to have to let go of some really solid players here. So another team will definitely claim some of these Eagles offensive linemen off waivers. We're talking Holland Pierce. We're talking about a player like Trevor Keegan, who the Eagles drafted in the 5th round last year. Matt Pryor was originally selected by the Eagles before he got traded to the Colts last year. He played very well as a starter for the Chicago Bears. There might not be a spot for him on this team. Lincoln Vakalahi, you can get away with having him on your team as part of the International Pathway Program, and he doesn't occupy a spot on the 53-man roster if you want to continue to develop him. Before we get to the defensive side of the ball, Eagles Super Bowl hats are still on sale. We have sold a bunch of them thanks to our friends at Fanatics, and Michael Rubin and Fanatics very happy with everything that we're doing here on the show because a lot of people are hopping on this deal. Super Bowl hats on sale, just $17. All you have to do, use that link down below, chatsports.com/Super Bowl hat. There are kids hats available and adult hats available. You can find them both by using that link down below. Defensive tackles. Jalen Carter, a no-brainer, has an opportunity to solidify himself as the best defensive player in football this upcoming year. Last year, he was one of the best and most disruptive defensive players in the NFL. And without his play at the end of that Rams game in the divisional round, the Eagles Super Bowl run may have never happened. There's an alternative reality in which they choke the end of that game, but Jalen Carter just came through in crunch time. Jordan Davis, Moro Ajomo, Ty Robinson, and Thomas Booker rounding out the defensive tackle list here. Byron Young, Gabe Hall are players who get let go. They'll be battling with Thomas Booker here. And Booker's an interesting player, very smart, went to Stanford, a little bit smaller as a defensive tackle, but his get-off is very fast, allowing him to win some mismatches there. At edge rusher, Will the Eagles make a move here? We will certainly see. They really like the young guns and Nolan Smith, Jalen Hunt, Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche picked up in free agency. Antoine Powell-Ryland, one of the more productive defensive ends in college football the last couple of years. I think he makes the team, and I think that he can contribute right away. And then the Eagles did bring back Patrick Johnson. His ability to play on special teams helps him here. At linebacker, Zach Bond, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Jahad Campbell, and Smile Mondon. They make the team. Smile Mondon can help you right away on special teams. We'll see if the Eagles put Campbell on PUP. Hopefully not. I think that would be a disaster. Hopefully with that labrum surgery, he gets on the field at some point in training camp or in the preseason. And I think you're starting off-ball linebackers week 1 because Nakobe Dean is hurt. Bond and Axeman Jr. here. And I think Nakobe Dean is put on PUP to start the year. That gives the Eagles some roster flexibility because he does not occupy a spot on the 53-man roster either. Who will start opposite of Quinyon Mitchell? That'll be another good training camp and preseason battle, but I'm pretty confident in saying that these 6 corners are going to make the team. Obviously, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, Mac McWilliams, who the Eagles took out of UCF in the draft, and then Eli Ricks gets that final cornerback spot. That's a pretty solid cornerback room right there. At safety, 4 of them, Reed Blankenship, Andrew Makuba, Sidney Brown, and Tristan McCullum. I think these 3 are shoo-ins to make the team. Who will that 4th safety be? Andre Sam will be competing with Tristan McCullum. So too will Lewis Cine. But Cooper DeJean playing some safety, according to Vic Fangio, could alter what the Eagles do and their roster numbers here. And then lastly, our specialists. Something interesting happened this offseason. The Eagles let go of Rick Lovato, who won 2 Super Bowls with Philadelphia, and they signed Charlie Hewlett to be their new long snapper. I think that had to do with Jake Elliott struggling last year. He was awesome in the Super Bowl, but hopefully he can rebound after having probably the worst year of his career. But Jake Elliott is going to be this team's kicker, one of the best kickers in the game. Braden Mann, so much of a better punter as compared to the Aussie and Aaron Sipos. He's been really good the last 2 years. And then Avery Williams. I didn't include him in the running back room. The Eagles are kind of utilizing him as a Swiss Army knife. He didn't really do anything throughout the spring. So he's going to have to prove that he can stay healthy, prove his value as both a punt returner and a kick returner. He can do both at a very high level. That's what he did with the Atlanta Falcons. But he also lined up inline tight end, slot receiver. He started off as a DB in his NFL career. An interesting player who the Eagles really like, who can be a very dynamic returner. He gets that final roster spot for Philadelphia. So grade my Eagles roster projection following OTAs and minicamp. A, B, C, D, or F? Let me know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.